Doctor, were you contacted by the Ocean County Prosecutor's Office in regard to the decedent, Corey Micciolo?
Yes.
And can you tell the jurors why you were contacted?
I received initial contact from the Ocean County Prosecutor's Office in September of 2021. They asked me to review material related to the death of Corey Micciolo with an eye toward rendering an opinion as to cause and manner of death.
Now, Doctor, did you prepare reports in regard to your findings and opinions regarding this matter?
I did.
Your Honor, if I may approach counsel?
Yes.
Thank you. If I may approach, Doctor, I'm now showing you what has been marked S50, S51, and S52. Do you recognize those?
I do.
And can you tell the jurors what those are?
S51,
Are those your reports in this matter?
yes.
And would those reports aid in your testimony today?
Yes.
Now, did you perform the autopsy of Corey?
No.
Can you tell the jurors who performed the autopsy?
Dr. Ragasa, Dante, I believe is his first name, Dante Ragasa, of the Ocean County Medical Examiner's Office, performed the autopsy examination on Corey.
And when was the autopsy performed?
Autopsy was performed in April of 2021. Let me see what the specific date was. On the 3rd of April, 2021.
And did you review the autopsy report authored by Dr. Ragasa?
I did.
And what other materials did you review to formulate the basis for your opinions?
In addition to the autopsy report, I saw the images that were generated in association with the autopsy. And I examined the histological slides, and we'll talk about those momentarily. The slides that you look at under the microscope. So I looked at that. And then I had medical records from 3 different hospital facilities. I believe it's County Medical Center and Jersey Shore Medical Center and South Ocean. I saw medical records from Ivy Pediatrics, which were Corey's pediatric care provider. Certainly I saw police documentation, law enforcement documentation. I saw some telephone records. I had access to a video of Corey on a treadmill. And subsequent to issuing my first report, I received additional materials. I did receive an expert report from an infectious disease specialist, Dr. Feingold, and a report from a defense pathologist expert, Dr. Bodden.
Did you also review video from April 2nd of 2021 from the decedent's mother's phone occurring around 9 a.m.?
Indeed, I did, yes.
And you also reviewed autopsy photos?
Yes.
Do you have an opinion, after you reviewed all of this material, in regard to the decedent's cause of death?
Yes.
And can you tell the jurors what that opinion is?
I'm simply going to quote from my report because it's a mouthful, and we'll break it down. But Corey died of blunt impact injuries of the chest and abdomen with laceration of the heart, left pulmonary contusion, and laceration and contusion of the liver.
And can you explain to the jurors, when you say cause of death, what does that mean?
Cause of death is, it sounds simple enough, but it's something that's very specific. cause of death is the disease or injury or combination of those things that initiates what's ultimately a lethal train of events, and without which death would not have occurred. So there are many, many, many causes of death.
And what about blunt force trauma? Can you explain to the jurors what that means?
In forensic pathology, there are various kinds of external forces that can act on the body. There could be penetrating trauma, such as that from gunshot wounds or stab wounds, or there can be blunt impact injury. And in that situation, you have force applied to the body over a much broader area than a single bullet or blade would cause. That blunt impact could be a small area or a large area, but it produces a different kind of injury than penetrating trauma does. And the kinds of injuries associated with blunt impact include contusions or bruising of the skin or internal organs, lacerations, tearing of tissue because of the result of the blunt force applied to it, or fracture of bone.
And what affects blunt force trauma and the impact on the body?
Well, the impact can be anything from minor to life-threatening. If you get up in the middle of the night in a strange hotel room and hit your shin against a nightstand, that may raise a contusion. But all that is bleeding under the surface of the skin, and that will resolve over time, and that will be fine. If you were to fall against that nightstand, you might sustain a laceration of your scalp. That may require stitches, but likewise you would recover from that. If you sustain any of these kinds of blunt impact injuries with sufficient severity, it could conceivably bring about your death if they were severe enough.
After reviewing the materials in this case, did you formulate an opinion as to the decedent's manner of death?
I did.
And can you tell the jurors what your opinion is?
Corey's manner of death is homicide. While there are many, many, many causes of death, typically in forensic pathology, there are only 5 manners of death. And manner of death is simply a one-word description to explain how a death came about. And those 5 are natural, accident, suicide, homicide, or in rare instances, undetermined. In Corey's case, in that these injuries could not have been inflicted by himself with any kind of intent, it's certainly not suicide. These injuries, given their pattern and distribution, are consistent with having been inflicted by another person. Therefore, any death that is related to the actions of another person is, from a medical examiner's standpoint, from an epidemiological or public health standpoint, homicide. Now, it doesn't have any legal significance, but that's the way that a medical examiner certifies it. So Corey's death was at the hands of another person, therefore it is a homicide.
Does a case histology impact the determination of manner of death?
Well, it can in certain instances. If you have a gunshot wound to the head with a perforation of the skull and brain, histology or examining tissue under the microscope doesn't add a whole lot. But in a case like this, certainly the examination of the tissues under the microscope was helpful in reaching my conclusions.
Did you make any findings regarding Corey's medical records from Southern Ocean Medical Center on April 2nd of 2021?
And I'm going to ask you to clarify that a little bit because I'm not entirely certain what the question is.
Did you review the medical records from Southern Ocean Medical Center on April 2nd of 2021?
Yes, I reviewed those records from April 2nd.
And can you tell the jurors if that helped to formulate your opinion as to cause and manner of death?
It did, yes.
And can you explain why?
Well, Corey presented to Southern Ocean at around 3 o'clock. At that point, he was already in serious medical condition. He was ashen, gray, in a shock-like state, and was fairly medically unstable. There was an attempt to make an assessment as to what might have been going on with him by doing a CT scan, and he got worse in the CT scanner to the point where he underwent a cardiac arrest.
And doctor, did you review any blood work from that hospital?
Yes.
And did that impact your conclusions?
Yes.
And what about any post-mortem CT scans?
He had a postmortem CT scan. I don't find those of particular value, certainly compared to an autopsy, as to determining cause and manner of death. But I did see that there was a postmortem CT scan, and I looked at its result.
Did you review the medical records from Jersey Shore Medical Center the evening of April 1st of 2021?
I did.
And can you tell the jurors about that?
Well, that particular visit was at the end of a sequence of events wherein Corey initially was seen by his pediatrician. There were some concerns about these bruises that Corey had as to whether or not this represented some mistreatment or child abuse. So Corey was referred to the emergency room, and I believe Corey and his mom went to one, but then they went to Jersey Shore after that. At that examination, he had a physical done, and they documented the various bruises that he had on different parts of his body, none of which were life-threatening. His clinical status at the time was perfectly stable. He was normal. He was conversational. He spoke with the doctor. He gave history. He made some disclosures. They also did some blood work and an x-ray of his chest, and all of that was completely normal.
Did you review the findings from Dr. Ragasa's autopsy performed on April 3rd of 2021?
I did.
And can you tell the jurors what Dr. Ragasa's findings were?
So Dr. Ragasa received, the body was taken to the medical examiner's office, I believe, the night before, but Dr. Ragasa performed his examination on the 3rd and documented all of the bruises or contusions that were on various aspects of Corey's body. Those were the primary external findings that he had. But an autopsy is a very detailed surgical examination of not only the external aspect of the body, but the internal aspect as well. There's a large Y-shaped incision made from the shoulders to the middle of the chest and down the center of the body, allowing the pathologist to take a systematic examination of each of the organ systems. It was during that internal examination that Dr. Ragasa saw and documented several abnormalities. There was a large contusion of one of Corey's lungs, I believe it was the left lung. Examination of Corey's heart externally didn't show anything, but on the internal examination of the heart, after the heart was opened to reveal the chambers of the heart, a laceration or tear in the tissue was revealed near the apex or the tip of the heart, on the inside wall of the heart. Below the diaphragm is that flat muscle that divides your chest organs from your abdominal organs. Below the diaphragm, on the right side where the liver lives, there were two injuries that he documented. There was a laceration or tear in the liver tissue on the right edge, the right lateral aspect of the liver, and there was also a contusion or bleeding underneath the capsule of the liver on the front edge of the liver. There was a small amount of free blood in the floor of the pelvis, undoubtedly associated with the liver laceration.